Hi, my name is Brandyn Osborne, and today I will be talking to you about my final project for Illinois Institute of Technology's Sustainability of Critical Materials class. The topic I chose is in regards to food waste, and my project is titled Taking Expired Food Off the Shelf and Putting It into Useful Hands. We'll be talking and looking into examining the amount of food waste via expired foods in grocery stores all across the spectrum, from dairy to produce to canned goods, junk food, everything. Provide an implementable project that will help cut back on this waste, explore different viable options for expired food as far as throwing them away, making compost, or donating them to food pantries or selling them to salvage stores. And if for some reason one of those alternatives are not an option, to find another venue that is a viable option. The reason I chose this topic is because in America alone, we have a huge problem with food waste. On average, 43 billion pounds of food is wasted per year at the retail level. So that's not, you're not finishing your plate or people just throwing stuff out. That's simply expired food, produce gone rotten, many different types of retail waste. Wasted food is put into landfills, which is never sustainable. We want to keep those to a minimum because it impacts the environment. Apart from the environmental impact, there's a community impact because families go hungry even though there's food that's we're making and then throwing away. So that's more wasted resources in America and all around the world as well. The objective of this project is to simply standardize and streamline the process of removing expired food from any grocery store. Just because food is expired or is beyond the sell-by or best by date does not mean that it is harmful to be consumed. There are studies out there that have shown that a can of soup, for example, can last 6 months to a year after it's been expired. There are plenty of different studies that show that just because something says it needs to be eaten by this, it doesn't really hurt that much to still consume that product. It just might not be the best quality. Another objective is to simply cut down on that average food loss per year, because not only are we wasting precious resources, but we're burning fuels to make these products that aren't being used, which are then being thrown into landfills, which it's an endless cycle of waste. The biggest objective is to implement a process that allows for any store to make better use of their expired foods. To find a way to take whatever is expired and make something positive from that. Because we've already lost revenue, we've already lost plenty of different resources with this food that's being expired, and if we can make something good come out of that expired food, it would be a really big goal and an objective to this project to be finalized. As of right now, there are multiple different options for expired food. Grocery stores today, on average, they usually throw food away. Some donate to food pantries, some sell to salvage stores, and some try to compost whatever they can. Now, stores today are simply rotating their stock and doing one of these options. The objective of this project is to find the most viable option per store, per city, or standardize it so that you can be presenting this option or that option to a store based on their location. It's not really an additional amount of work because as of right now, food expires. It's absolutely inevitable that something is going to expire. Stores also have to rotate their stock because they don't sell expired food. So you have point A and point B. With that, we have point C, which is leading them to throw food away or take one of these other options down here. If we can find a way to implement a procedure that eliminates them throwing food away, which creates a negative impact, and finding a way to implement either of these three options down here, which all create positive impacts on the environment and the community, that would be an ideal situation. The main goals of this project is to determine the amount of man-hours needed to start the implementation of it. What that means is to determine how many man-hours per week or per day will it require beyond the rotating stock, which is something grocery stores already do. So from them moving all of their stock that they're already taking and putting the end result or the end location somewhere else, to determine how much time that's going to take on average to pitch that to the stores. Not only are they going to need a few more man hours, we're going to have to figure out the lost revenue of expired food on average on a weekly basis per department. So if we know that produce on average expires more than, say, canned goods, that's a loss of revenue because one's going to be higher than the other. The biggest thing is always cost. Whenever you look at anything in that sense, you want to take it from a cost perspective. What that means is, with this project, we want to find a cost-effective way to expose a food that can be implemented anywhere. The standardized procedure where if you don't have a food pantry or you don't have a food salvage store, grocery store within proximity, it's not going to be very cost-effective because you have to either A, drive it over there, you have to store it for a long period of time. There are plenty of other costs that are factored into this, and we need to figure out what to do if that option isn't viable. Another goal is to evaluate inventory control. If, for example, it's Thanksgiving, and we know that Thanksgiving you can forecast you'll be buying more turkeys. Now, if you're buying a dozen turkeys and you're only selling 3 turkeys, you've got 9 turkeys left over that are going to go to waste. That's a small example, but if you can maintain that good balance between what's selling and what's not selling per time, forecasting will be a great benefit to this project. The solution that I've thought of is to find a radius around each store and find how many man hours are required per store per day per week. Once you can map out a good radius that determines, how far away a centralized location is from the grocery store to a food pantry or a salvage grocery store or even a community garden where you can use compost. Once you figure out which option is the most viable, standardize that option and present it to grocery store chains. What that means is, if there's not a food pantry but there's a salvage grocery store, what do you do if you have one grocery store at point A and you have a salvage grocery store at point B? Figuring out a way to match those and combine those two entities together so that they can work in harmony and come to the best possible solution. Some of the benefits to this project is that it eliminates overstock and helps cut down inventory cost. With that brings the allowance for new products, because if you're not ordering as much or you're only selling X amount of one product, you can bring in a new product because you have room for it now. With that, there's economic gains to be had through either more profit, more revenue, less profit lost because you're not throwing certain things away. And if you're donating to a food pantry, there's tax breaks involved. If you're implementing this type of project into your company, it's easy publicity for sustainability. And as of today, sustainability is a huge movement. With that being said, it's better for the environment. Less trash in our landfills is a good thing. Some of the fallbacks with this project is that there's a certain amount of man hours that need to be incorporated in addition to what is already being implemented today. What I mean is, you have to train a new employee or train the old employees on the new procedure. That's going to take a little bit of time. There could also be different scheduling. If a store rotates their stock at 6 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock at night, food pantries might not be open, or a salvage grocery store might not be able to make a pickup at that time. Then you need to find a place of where to store all this extra leftover expired food. On top of that, certain foods might need to be destroyed. Certain produce can get in the way or rot and bring negative side effects such as rodents or fruit flies or anything like that, and that's not a good thing. There's really no alternative backup plan for this at the moment, and that could be a setback because you either have option A, B, or C, and there's nothing else besides those. The biggest challenge I believe for this project is just finding an average radius based on each grocery store. One way to look at that is to take a major city versus a small city. Major cities will have more options, smaller cities will not. Calculating the appropriate formula to determine which is which, or which is going to be more beneficial, will definitely be a challenge. The logistics that make this project work, they're not going to be too complex, but implementing them might be a little bit difficult. Some companies aren't a big fan of sustainability, or they might not understand it. Pitching that to possible clients might be a challenge. The implementation of this project seems simple up front. Take the old stuff and move it somewhere useful. Despite how simple the concept might be, the logistics are a little more complicated. Like I said earlier, leaving expired food in a store, especially produce, can cause unwanted results. But moving expired food from the store to the dumpster is easy. Moving it to an off-site location is going to be a little more challenging. By developing a standard process for each food group or each store itself, that will create a very standardized plan, which will then have little effort once the plan is in place. In conclusion, there are only a few alternatives for this type of project. Throw the food away, recycle it, or put it somewhere useful. This project is pretty simple when it comes to putting food that's going to be thrown out into useful hands. There's a lot of research that needs to be done up front, but once that research is complete and calculated, there should be minimal effort to implement this type of project. It'll have a long-lasting environmental and community impact, and it's very sustainable because we are keeping out more waste from our landfills, as well as putting food into the hands of others. Below you will find the research that I've done for this project. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And I hope that you have learned a thing or two about sustainability and the amount of food that's been wasted in America. There are options out there, and they're sustainable options. Always be thinking for the future. Thank you, and have a great day.